June. It's a mess.
Let's stand and say the pledge if you will. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Not a big crowd here on a rainy. Oh. If someone would make approval of our agenda with a addition of a closed session on property acquisition down below council comments. If somebody would.
Mayor Gons, I move we approve the agenda with that modification.
Thank you, Jeff. Second? Thank you, Sandra. Any discussion? All in favor? Aye. Any opposed? Okay. Public comment, I got several signed up. I'm sure there'll be a public comment section in the public hearing session. If that's when you'd like to speak, then that's when we'll do it. If you got something else, we'll do it right now. Looks like Linda, okay. Mr. Foster's coming first, okay.
I won't take long because Patty will be buzzing there. My name's Jim Foster, of course, and I live in Mills River. First of all, I'd like to congratulate council on obtaining the additional acreage back here. I would also like to thank Randy and James for their work on the land preservation initiative that we are in the process of implementing, and suggest to council this is a great opportunity for council to set an example and make sure this property is preserved forever in an open state, free of major construction, and not to rush into any additional construction. And I think you've already taken the first step by leasing the property for the upcoming year. Farming will continue. And however, there's one use under consideration that I ask you to expedite, and that is securing one of the existing dairy buildings for the permanent home of the farmers market. Not only would this give the farmers market a permanent home, which could quite possibly allow them to expand and grow to multiple days, but the building could be used for numerous other things by the residents of Mills River for the rest of the week. Let's make this building a memorial to the past agricultural endeavors in Mills River. We could start by placing the cow figure that's been donated by the previous owner to the town and make it a center point of this building. Name the cow Millie. I will be glad to discuss the success of what this could mean to the history of Mills River with you later based on some previous knowledge I have. Anyway, one last point. Let us not forget the adjacent neighborhood of Mills River Village and not use the property for some activity that will disrupt this neighborhood with noise. Thank you.
Thank you. All right, Jeff Moore, you're next. You want to wait? Okay. Okay.
Good evening, Mr. Mayor and Council. At the last planning board meeting, we started a discussion about, just a discussion about the land that's currently zoned MRMU, which is the least restrictive type of zoning. And the board wanted to discuss, is there something that can be done to get ready for our comprehensive plan where that land has other mainly to preserve Mills River the way Mills River is, to keep the rural land the rural land. It's just a discussion. It's very early on. Just wanted to give you all a heads up that that's one of the things that we're thinking about. Don't know what the final way to do that would be, but I understand it's going to be a lot of discussion because it really affects people and their property and what they can do with it. So it's something not to be taken lightly. It's something that we should expend considerable amount of effort on. So just want to give you a heads up on that.
And I appreciate
If
that.
you have any questions, please feel free to tell you what I know. So
Okay, thank you, sir.
just the basic beginning of the discussion, and like it's our desire as a planning board to see Mills River keep at least the rural areas, to keep that rural feel, to keep Mills River. So when we have land that pretty much allows a lot of things in a residential area, is that something we need to discuss? Don't know what the final outcome is going to be,
Okay,
but it's something that the board wants to discuss, and you see what's out there, and of course get lots of public input, hopefully.
yeah.
And that way, if there is a recommendation to make, we can make a recommendation that is well thought out. Does that answer your question, or was that okay?
What I would do, Jeff,
Absolutely.
is take it back to your board that I think this will be a great opportunity for one or two council members to come to these particular meetings to put our input in it as well. And I think it'll make everything flow a little bit better and make it a lot easier on us when it comes back to the big round table here for us to decide.
Absolutely. We'd
Okay.
be grateful for council coming to give us your insight.
Okay, thank you so
Thank you.
much. Linda Britt.
Good evening, council. My name's Linda Britton, and I'm with the Mills River Farm Market, but I'm just a citizen of the town of Mills River too. We've been out of town for several days since the last time the meeting was held, and I just wondered if any progress had been made toward the excavation of the footers and whatnot on the shed while we were out of town. Is that anything you can share at this point, or is that something we
I
just need to
can
do
tell
later?
you that we have touched base with Bradley Johnson. Mr. Case was concerned about any wires or anything buried underground that he might need to know about close to those piers.
Mhm.
Nicole has spoken. We do know there's a water line close by, but we don't think it's near close enough. But I'll let Nicole take it from there.
Yeah, the Mr. Case came by this weekend, so he was able to excavate the footers, and our staff has been working to do the fine work and cleaning off the bolts. I expect hopefully next week or the week after our engineer will be back to look at that structure.
Good.
Good.
Well, thank you for that update.
Thank you. Tammy Ross.
Hello, Council. I'm Tammy Ross, and I live over on Schoolhouse Road. I am on the Parks, Trails, and Recreation Committee, but I am also just a citizen and here as a citizen and not necessarily. We haven't spoken recently about our new restroom facilities, but I walk here most mornings during the week with friends in the morning. And, we go really far. We walk far and we come back. And so the closest bathroom that we can get to is much appreciated. And I can't tell you how infuriating it is that it has been closed for this long. And I know that, y'all aren't just leaving it for the fun of it, but I have not been able to listen to the last couple of meetings completely all the way through, or I think I have part here and there. So anyway, I don't know if it's been discussed over the last 4 weeks or so, and decided, because I know that the HVAC was an issue, which caused the pipes, and then we're waiting, and there's discussion about that, and then apparently now there's a sewage problem. I just feel like at this point the building is there, and whatever has to be done at this point, we just need to pay it and get it done. And then if we need to settle up with someone, that's fine. But I really appreciate it. And I know, especially with baseball starting soon, and everybody's going to be right there, and they're going to be infuriated to come here and not be able to use those restrooms. And I know it seems like those other ones are right there, but I tell you what, when you walk it, it is not right there. It is a little hike, okay? So, and when you got to go, it comes a longer hike. So I just implore you to please push this to make it happen as soon as possible. I appreciate it.
Will do.
Thank
Thank you. All right, that's all I've got on the list for public comment. Anybody else have anything to say before we move on with our regular agenda? Yeah, yes, sir.
Just want to echo what, our tag on, I should say, to what Jeff had brought up, Brian Ross, Schoolhouse Road. The planning board specifically with that future land use map in mind, I'd really encourage that. I appreciate the advice to have one of you guys or two of you guys come to the meeting. The word I want to keep hitting everyone with is down zoning. You can ask Michael if that's a new word we're all learning, and I like this word a lot. It not only will help be a tool in helping change some of the zoning to match the future land use map, but there's two parts of the conversation: use and density. I know density, Randy, James, finding out that our neighboring county has, 1 home per acre, and we're more dense than rural Henderson County. So the two things, usage and density, and using the future land use map. The other thing, and James already said this to you directly, but just to share with everybody, I noticed and I appreciate the open invitation to the working session for the park the other day. I noticed in the slide that Sarah was sharing, and I get it, we're a community beyond the town limits, but about 40% of those people that responded were not taxpayers in the town. I would really ask that somebody say, okay, well, show us the priority for the people who pay the taxes here, and maybe give some emphasis to the people who are paying the taxes for this park and not just the outlying community. I get it. They use it. They're part of the community, but it's our dollars.
Exactly.
So, appreciate it.
I think with the, looking at the mixed use, I think there's going to be multiple meetings that planning board's going to have. So I think that's going to give all our council members a chance to come in without having a special group meeting put together for it. So that'd be great. All right. Anyone else? Okay, moving on. Approval of our consent agenda. Somebody make a motion. Thank you, Randy. Second.
I'll second the motion.
Thank you, Jeff. Any discussion? All in favor? Aye. Any opposed? Hearing none. Okay. We're going to move on to our regular agenda, our public hearing for our text amendment for lighting ordinance. Okay. Do we need to go into closed session for this? I mean, not our legislative session for this. Public hearing. I'll get it in a minute. I'm rusty. Someone make a motion for us to go into our public hearing. Thank you, Randy. Second. Thank you, Sandra. Any discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Any opposed? All right, we're in public. Council has conflict of interest with any of this? We're going to be discussing on this public hearing. Hearing none? Okay. We'll get the staff to present.
Mayor and council, this evening, you're conducting a public hearing to hear feedback from the citizens of Mills River regarding the new lighting ordinance that our planning staff has drafted. Mr. Malachek will run through the highlights for you and answer any questions. Might go forward.
Evening, council. So this all started back in August at the planning board meeting where we first had discussions about controlling light pollution and spillage onto adjacent properties in Mills River. Obviously, with the growth of the town, every new development's adding lights, and so not only is there light going up into the night sky, but also light going from commercial properties onto residential properties. So the planning board basically asked us to come back with some examples. We did that at the September meeting. Reviewed examples from everywhere from Black Mountain to Brevard, Henderson County, Buncombe County, Waynesville, and then took basically the best parts and the things that the planning board desired to see and put that into a draft ordinance. Reviewed that at 2 meetings, and then in December they recommended the version that you're seeing tonight for approval. The focus of the ordinance, basically the applicability is to non-residential development, so we're not talking about single-family home lighting. But non-residential development, multifamily, and major and minor subdivisions with new roads. And the way the ordinance enforces these new standards is through light fixture standards. So there's some definitions in there that you'll see for cutoff and full cutoff fixtures. And basically what that means is it's controlling the amount of light that's going above the horizontal plane of the fixture, either straight out or up into the night sky itself. So cutoff fixtures, I think it's less than 2.5% of the light goes out in that direction. And then full cutoff fixtures, it's purely downward focused. So again, the idea with this type of regulation is that those types of non-residential uses would incorporate these fixture types, and then there would be less light trespass onto surrounding residential properties, and hopefully less light pollution of the night sky as well. There's also a section for prohibited lighting. Obviously, being near the airport and with lots of aircraft around, we don't want people shooting lasers or searchlights up into the sky. So those are a couple things we put in there as well. Also, we want to protect our vehicular users as well. So, you never want lights that are going to imitate a traffic control device or even a sign light that might shine into a driver's eye. So those are all prohibited types of lighting in this ordinance as well that the town could enforce. Another thing we're doing with these non-residential developments, so when they apply for a zoning permit, they're going to have to submit a lighting plan. Just think of that as a site plan where the light fixtures are going to be located. So if there's a street pole, they're going to mark that. If there's a light on the building, they're going to mark that. And then they provide the fixture details to us to show it's compliant with those types. The other thing the ordinance does is set a maximum amount of light at the property line. And the measurement we saw that was common through most of the ordinances was 1 foot candle. What's a foot candle? Take a regular candle, hold it a foot away from a wall, and the light projected on a 1 square foot surface, that's what that light intensity is. So again, a lower light level because we want to protect, again, neighboring properties from light trespass onto those properties from commercial uses. So that's another standard built into the ordinance. And then lastly, dealing with non-conforming lighting. I believe Hendersonville passed a lighting ordinance sometime last year. One provision they had, which we did not include, was basically forcing compliance over a period of time. I think they may have had within 10 years, everyone has to comply no matter what. We're not planning that, but there are provisions that if you replace more than 50% of the light fixtures on a site, if you expand a parking lot by more than 50% or loading dock or other lighted area, that whole area needs to be brought into compliance. And again, those would be things we'd review through the zoning permit process. Those are the highlights. I'm happy to go through the code section by section if you have specific questions. So the zoning ordinance with the new language is your attachment A. Attachment B is the subdivision ordinance. It's quite long, but there's really only a few sentences in there, basically referencing the subdivision lighting standards for roads or new roadways. So basically that's pointing back to the new lighting ordinance. And then we've got the planning board statement of consistency as attachment C, and then your draft town council statement of consistency as attachment D. Obviously, this checks some of the big boxes of the comprehensive plan because controlling light pollution is part of keeping Mills River what it is, rural, agricultural, and maintaining the character of the community. So I'm happy to entertain any questions.
Yeah. Any questions for staff?
Is there any exemption mentioned for
So agriculture, you're right, I didn't cover the exemptions. Agriculture is not impacted by this because of the blanket zoning exemption. So any agricultural use would not have to comply, just like they don't have to even apply for a zoning permit. But I'll piggyback on that because there is an exemption section, and I might as well mention it here. Flagpole lighting, a lot of times those are directed upward, but that's something that's exempt. Sports and recreational facility lighting of a temporary duration, construction safety lighting, holiday seasonal lighting, community event lighting, and then governmental lighting, used for federal, state, local government purposes. Those are all exempted.
Anything else?
While we're on that section, so how are you going to go about special events? Like you have to get a like you get a noise permit to rave until 10. Is the light with that, or how are you going to control that?
Special events is not covered under this. So it's more about new development and sites that may be remodeling or expanding. With special event permits, we issue the permit and basically state these are the limits, within when you can make that level of noise. But that would not apply for lighting.
Okay.
I mean, it could be put in. It was a conversation we did have with the planning board about including single family residential. There were some hesitations about that. And also staff, really just doesn't have the capacity to be the lighting police and going to someone and saying, can you put your light down a little bit? We were hoping that would be something that could just be resolved between neighbors. But there are ordinances out there that, believe it or not, have standards for single family home floodlights. So it's legally allowed. You can do it if you want to.
Question I had is the building to the right of the new fire department that's would it be in compliance with this?
We were just out there today. I didn't get a good look at the fixtures because it was raining. But those ones, I don't know if they project upward because they're kind of tube shaped. Most likely not.
Okay.
Yeah.
What else you got? Anybody got any other questions for staff before we move to the next section?
I have
Go
one.
ahead.
Sure. Okay. I guess it's sort of more of an overarching comment is, I read through some other lighting ordinances before drilling down on this one, and I had read some, or this seemed overly complicated, and I'll admit I did not tune in to the planning board meetings where this was a subject, so I didn't really know the genesis or how this came to be. But some of the ones I'd read from other jurisdictions, they would simply say that, adjacent property you should not or can't see or shouldn't be able to see the light source, and which means, it has to be louvered, hooded, shielded, directed away or something like that. It seemed like some of what's in here, it gets very granular, very technical, and I didn't know if we needed that. If you can't see the bulb from adjoining property, it should be okay. And it seemed, I was trying to think of how to make it easier to enforce, one, for staff, but also two, for a concerned neighbor that says, well, the clients, well, obviously I can walk up the edge of the property and say, well, I can see this halogen bulb, I can see this LED diode, or, whatever it is, and that's not allowed by the standard. But, this foot candle and light sensing devices and all that just seemed overly complicated. I don't know. Did you explore any options like that on lighting ordinance that just was maybe more
Line of sight based?
basically? Yes.
I didn't see that in any of the examples we looked at, and we probably looked at 8 of them. But again, that's perfectly legal as well. If that's the direction council wants to go, we can change it to something a little simpler.
And I'll read, since I butchered it, but one I'd written down: all lighting or illumination units or sources shall be hooded, shielded, so they are not visible from any adjacent lot or real property. And I thought, well, that sort of at least does away with the enforcement, that one about light measurement and holding the thing parallel to the ground, and at so on and so forth. I thought maybe some of that would simplify it, because I can't. The way it reads now, if I had a concern with a neighboring property, I'm not sure I could decipher that they were in violation or not without calling town staff out after dark, which is after.
Well, and maybe I should clarify that point, that the way this ordinance was written is there most likely will not be lighting nuisance complaints. This is more about, again, expanding development and new development only. So under the ordinance, the way it's written, if you're in a single family home and if you're next to a commercial property and there's a light shining at you, I mean, it's possible we could reach out to the property owner and maybe work with them to do something. But again, this really captures development when it's applying for a permit or doing an expansion or doing a building addition. It's less about light complaints. But again, that was something the planning board explored and we could put in.
Okay. I have some nitpicking questions,
Go ahead.
but Randy may want to go now before I get on this.
So when I read it, and I did read it all, thanks for all that. And I'm not complaining or anything, but it is a little bit on the complicated side. And I get that most of the enforcement is going to happen on the front end with a new development, correct?
Yes.
So, but how would you go about the 50% smoke? Okay, they replaced half their vote. How would you ever enforce something like that?
It'd be very difficult. I mean, it's more about getting the word out. I mean, one thought I had was contacting some of our largest facilities, you know, industrial, larger commercial facilities in town, and just letting them know. I mean, we have their contact information. But no, you're right. I mean, if a light goes out at the gas station, we're never going to know if it's changed out.
It seemed like 6 months or more, between planning board and council and all that. And it all came back to who's going to enforce this. And I get, most of this enforcement is going on the front end, like I said, but there's still going to be a citizen in Mill River that's going to call down here and say, this light is shining on me. I know you have a light nuisance ordinance in place now. Come and fix this for me. So what do you do with that?
I mean, we would just have to explain them that our regulations do not cover light nuisances, that it's just focused on new development.
So
I mean, we get complaints for things that we can't enforce legally now and have to tell people we can't legally do that as well.
I still get people griping about some of the noise ordinance that they feel like the town of Mills River is not enforcing at this point. And the noise ordinance has been in place for quite a while. I was hoping Kevin was here. Are you still getting much on like a noise ordinance?
We haven't gotten a noise complaint in over 6 months, probably.
Really?
Yeah. The last one for one of our beverage producers or one of the breweries, gosh, was spring of last year, summer. And then the last one we saw, I think, was when the fill dirt operation was really cutting down the hill and was going at like 12:30 at night. And we gave him a warning.
I just don't want town Mills River to pass another ordinance that we cannot enforce. It's just that simple. And I don't have a problem with the lighting ordinance. I really don't. I think it's something probably seems like there's a lot to this. That's just my 2 cents.
And again, I'm happy to pare it down if you'll direct me to specific areas. I will, since you were talking about complaints, the one thing I will say is we did receive multiple complaints about lighting last year. And luckily we were able to do something about it because the development was under construction and, we reached out and they put shielding on the lights for a low cost and planted some trees. But again, that's a good case scenario.
Jeff, you want to go ahead with your?
Yeah, I think it would just take a few minutes. In the lighting fixture standards, I was just curious if somebody wants to illuminate the front of their building, is that considered site area lighting, or does there need to be something if they just want to, like I said, basically illuminate the front of their building?
Commercial.
Yeah, or industrial, but somebody that would come for the new development. I just didn't know, because there was an issue that when Ingalls moved to town, that they had these lights that were about 35 feet tall that actually shined over the top of Ingalls, and it blinded drivers coming down North Mills River Road, and they put louvers on them and took care of that. But Ingalls, just for an example, is a retailer or business that they prefer to put big floodlights on their existing poles and illuminate the front of their whole store. And I just didn't know if something like that would be caught up in this or whether that would be, if that's missed.
124.
Thank you.
If it's a new development or they're expanding, then it would be caught in this. But if it's an existing facility and if those lights have been up for a period of time, unless they're changing out specific fixtures, because there is the provision that any new wall pack light has to be full cutoff and shielded. And the wall packs are oftentimes one of the biggest offenders because it's just a box that's shining straight out.
Okay.
Does that answer your question?
Yes, I guess I was just thinking that, okay, we get a new grocer coming in across from Ingalls, and they put on their plan that they submit to the town on the lighting that they've got floods to illuminate the front of their business. And I didn't know, would they be exempt or would that not be picked up because we have, floodlights and roadway lighting, pedestrian lighting, and sign lighting, but I didn't see anything about just illuminating the building. And so I was just curious if
anything that's directed upwards is going to be discouraged. And in regards to the new shopping center, because they already have a permit in and this isn't adopted, it technically doesn't apply. But we've already had this conversation with them and they have committed to using these fixture types.
Okay. Another question I had was when you get to the next section, the site area lighting standards, did you ever see any call for a limitation on the height of the fixture? If somebody want to put in 60-foot parking lot lamps, is kind of like you have in a rest area, is that acceptable? Or I didn't see anything reference to height. There's a lot of other parameters in here which are covered, but not the actual height of the device from the ground.
There were a couple ordinances that I believe dealt with that, but one of the things that, let's just talk about a new commercial site, that would be required if they submitted something is that site lighting plan. And part of that plan is what's called an ISOLux drawing that basically, think of like a topo map, except it's for light levels. So higher intensity in the center below the fixture and then less light as you go out. So again, if you have a higher mounted fixture, you're going to have more light cast, and that's going to be picked up in that drawing. So it's more on the applicant's engineer to basically submit that to us so we can guarantee that if they have a 60-foot pole and it's 20 feet from the property line, it's not going to be going into the house next door.
Okay. I didn't see anything about time of day if somebody is subject to this. If I'd read some ordinances where there was a maximum wattage allowed after like 11:30 p.m. and I didn't know if that had been kicked about with the planning board or if it made sense. But I know that's, as it comes to like electronic signs, that was one of the complaints was, that they go all night long and in the glare. So I just thought, this would be an opportunity to catch that too. And it's not unusual because I read it in other towns, cities, with their lighting ordinance.
It was discussed a little bit. I mean, some of the ordinances we looked at talked about dusk to dawn lighting. I don't think any of them referenced that after midnight it would go down to a certain level. But again, that's something that we could include if council wanted to.
And I think this is going to about wrap it up for everybody's benefit here. What sort of resources would the town need to implement this? Obviously we need some sort of handheld device to check if there's a new permittee that their lighting is not in compliance.
A decent light photometer, $150, but beyond that, it's on the applicant. Again, the lighting plan and the lighting diagram they submit is what's going to prove to us that light will not be cast out, into adjacent properties, especially with those street lights or higher mounted light fixtures.
And so you don't see any training needs for staff to read these plans, these ISOLux plans, because there's a lot of terms in here I'd never seen before. So I didn't know if there's a learning curve or.
In the ISOLux plan, they should have the foot candle level or the light level, again, per line in the drawing. So again, to be compliant, they would have to show that at the property line, it's only the 1 foot candle illuminance. again, staff, yeah, I mean, staff doesn't have the time to be the light police. And again, that's why we kind of went away from single family, because I could envision us getting a call going out there and holding a light meter up next to someone's floodlight. And also that's, we're not trained light measurement experts either. So it's somewhat objective when you just go out and do those measurements. So that's why I would expect we'd probably get one of those to double check, but we're going to rely on what the engineer's putting together.
All right. So you don't see need for training or anything like that for planning staff to.
I'll just throw out there, Mr. Young, that back in my day as a planning director, I reviewed lighting plans, so I'll share my knowledge if I need to.
Don't a lot of the manufacturers, like, when you go buy a new light fixture, tell you like, oh, they'll put out X number of foot candles and then back it back by how many feet it is away? So essentially, you just know that it needs to be X number of feet away from the property line.
Yeah, most of the fixtures come with like a cut sheet that has all the specifications on it, and might get to the point where he asks for that from a developer. It might just be part of their development submittal anyway, to help illustrate the actual light fixture itself, and then the pattern that it casts.
The only problem I see with this is the applicant, gives you a plan months ahead. There's a chance by the time it gets built out, that particular fixture ain't available. When y'all go out to do the inspection and you're looking 30, 40 foot. That's what's on here. The model numbers in there. You just have to common sense that's what you'll have to do. One question I had as I read through it is, we don't have it now. We got 2 elementary schools. If for some reason we had a middle school, high school built in Mills River, they're gonna have a football field, soccer field, all this. So how does the lighting of those fields potentially weigh into this? Do we need to put something in there now to safeguard those? Because they're gonna have lights.
So would it be considered a sport and recreational field or facility?
I would think.
Then that's exempt.
Okay.
Yeah. It has to be light of a temporary duration. If they just leave the lights, the field lights on all night, we're not going to be okay with that. But during use, that's exempt.
It is.
Exemption 160. Yeah.
Now, Mr. Malachek, if there's new technology and the applicant wants to use it, the way I read it, there's no process in the current proposed ordinance for like a process for non-standard lighting. Should there be, or
beyond the defined like full cutoff fixtures?
Yes, and again, I don't know what might be coming down, but I read in some where there was a process by which an applicant could, go through a non-standard lighting and submit it. Of course, usually it's at staff level, but nonetheless, I didn't see, it's either meets or doesn't meet. And I just thought, well, the way things change technology wise, there might be it may outstrip our ordinance, and there might be a need for some sort of a non-standard process for staff review.
I think even if the fixtures change drastically, the science, if you want to call it, of how lights cast on the ground is still going to be the same. So those lighting plans, no matter what the fixture is, should still capture whether it's compliant or not.
Any other questions?
Yes, I got one more. I'll piggyback a little bit off of if you can see the bulb versus all the foot candle stuff. Is that, in your opinion, is that a viable way to rewrite this? Because this is very much like the dark skies, very technical. It seems like there's ways around it versus, can I see the bulb or not?
You could do that, yeah. I mean, with the cutoff, I mean, I guess it depends on the angle too. If you're looking at a street light that's full cutoff, obviously you're going to be able to see the bulb, even though no light's going up above the plane. It depends upon the mounting height.
Another thing you need to take into consideration here is the terrain.
Mm-hmm.
If you've got a building that's on a hill over here, and that's group down here in this subdivision, you couldn't get it low enough. You'd have to put it in the dirt. They couldn't see the bulb. Looks to me like it.
But this also, you could also, if you're putting a foot candle meter on the ground on your property line, it wouldn't take much of a pump to block it. I think originally you had it at your height, right?
Like the measurement height.
Mm-hmm.
I don't think we even dictated that, but I do think, and Daniel
Yeah,
might know more.
you have it as measurement shall be made at finished grade, ground level.
Okay. That's what it says, yeah. But I
Yeah.
mean, I'm happy to do it at 3 feet. Yeah.
I own one of those light meters. They're pretty picky. You can change it with it just a little bit.
And again, that's why I would prefer us to rely less on measuring the light ourselves in the field and more on what the engineer's submitting. So like if there's an example where there's topography changes, the light's going to cast differently, that light drawing should capture that versus us going out and measuring.
Sure.
At some point, you might have to measure the light. As like Ken said, they could present a plan to approve the plan, but they found a cheaper fixture, and it might spread things out more. So how would you go about figuring that out?
I mean, probably, no, you're fine. Probably when we do, I mean, before we issue a CO for anything, we do the zoning inspection. We would probably just have to go at night, I guess, and go on the property line and take a measurement.
So that would just put you making a judgment call at that time.
Well, using a measurement device.
One option that Mike and I haven't discussed is to get a certification from the design engineer that the plans were built according to the plans, as built essentially, which they're saying that, yes, I designed these plans with these fixtures and I'm certifying that those are the fixtures that were installed. And that's as best we can do.
And from a legal standpoint, that would probably be the best decision made for everybody involved. Then if a conflict arises with a neighbor, then the trouble is really with the engineer that certified it. Which to me like. Anything else before we move on? Do we have an applicant, property owner, or any interested parties that would like to present any kind of evidence? We'd be glad to have you this moment.
I may be up here too soon. Jeff Moore, Schoolhouse Road, Mills River. Because I'm not presenting evidence, but my comment as the chair of the planning board and some of the thought processes we went through on this. We're not going to have a dark sky ordinance per se, maybe a darker sky or a dark as possible sky. A few nights ago, a couple of weeks ago, Duke did an upgrade and all the power went out. It was at midnight. My son just bought a telescope, so it's cold. He didn't want to take the telescope out. Well, we went outside with the binoculars. What a difference it made. You do away with the light pollution. Now, that's not practical, but it does show the difference. Anything that we can do to keep that light pollution down. I agree with if you can see the light source, then light will trespass on your property. However, with the topography, that could be a little difficult. The way to measure it as part of that plan was in our mind, in my mind, that when the developer submits that plan and it's sealed by an engineer, they're agreeing to use the fixtures to keep that light within the guidelines. So, and I agree that having a certification by an engineer that it was installed as planned, that should cover us. If then again, that was to get this up front, not to go after someone and say, hey, you're putting too much light out. That's a little late for that. The wall packs on the new building off of 280, I don't believe those do not meet what I envision this to address, because light goes everywhere. And light's good for security. Yes, there are definitely legitimate places we need light, but having that light trespass on the adjoining neighbors is what we'd like to try to at least limit as much as possible.
I've got one question for you, staff.
Yes, sir.
This certification, what would that cost the applicant in the upfront?
I don't know that it would cost that much, because once it's built, an engineer has to go out and certify the flood, stormwater
Okay.
Installations, and the concrete when it's going in has to be certified. There are a lot of different things that have to be certified anyway.
Okay.
So I don't think it would be that much additional. I hate to throw out numbers because I'll either be too high or too low, and y'all say, "Wow, you're not paid enough," or "Wow, you're paid a lot." But I would say it's pretty nominal in comparison to some of the other certifications have to be done.
Fair enough. Anything else while he's up? Nope.
Thank you. Thanks for your consideration in this.
Anyone else at this point? Okay. If other parties present, then the mayor's, okay, we got that. Public comment. Do you have any public comment? Would you just 3 minutes if you do? Come on up.
We won't need 3 minutes. Brian Ross, Schoolhouse Road, also on the planning board. We had that conversation really about enforcing, and that was a tough one for us because we know that we're not really equipped to enforce engine brakes, noise ordinances, but the signs help with the engine brakes. The noise ordinance word is getting out. We were trying to get low hanging fruit with this. We stayed away from residential. We stayed away from existing. We're trying to get some of the, going forward, the big buckets. And it was really, it may not look like it with all the words there, but we really were trying to get the big buckets of stuff, not all the little stuff. We regurgitated it several times. We ended up with just the big buckets here and going forward. Enforceability is always going to be hard, but I really think the noise ordinance is a great example. It has made a difference. It ain't perfect, and this isn't going to be either. But just wanted you to know that was our objective. And as a citizen, that's what I would hope my town would be looking to do. Get the big buckets out of the way.
All right. Discussion amongst yourselves.
Go ahead, Randy.
So how often, Michael, and do you see a new ordinance? Put a new ordinance in, something like this. I know in Brevard, they did sign ordinance years and years ago, and they gave people, I think it was 20 years to come under new ordinance. Do you see most of the time whenever an ordinance like this goes into effect, that they try to bring everything under control?
Yeah, that's something called an amortization clause in the ordinance that gives you a specific period of time, no matter what, to bring everything into compliance. I do see it again. That was something Hendersonville put out with a lot of backlash. So that was not something we thought was appropriate here and did not propose.
Just a reminder on that, we did put in the 50% to try to get the larger.
Yes. Yeah, so dealing with non-conformities, again, if you're expanding past that 50% mark, which is a common non-conformity ordinance language, but just getting anyone to spend the money to replace good lights at a certain time frame was not in here, and I don't think we discussed that in much detail.
I did get to watch the planning board meetings, and I enjoyed all the conversation and all the thought that went into it. And it did give you a lot to think about, but it answered a lot of questions too. And I do think that looking at it from the aspect of, as stuff adds in, but it does include, the way I saw it was, if a company out there does go to update or add to or expand, to where they're changing lights and stuff out, that would be an opportunity for them to update to meet this.
That's right. And specifically with the wall pack lighting, the worst offenders in terms of light trespass onto other properties. But we've, again, like I said about the shopping center, we've been tried to be proactive about this. In the past few commercials reviews we've done, we've just asked if people would be willing to comply. And you'd be surprised. I mean, a lot of lighting is trending this way already. I mean, a lot of stuff is LED. A lot of the stuff may not be fully shielded, but it is not just blowing light out everywhere like it used to.
So I appreciate all the hard work that the planning board put into it. And
If I understand correctly, let's just say, because the Triangle Stop just put a new facade on their business, in the past year. And had this been in place, obviously they had to come down for a permit for that modification. So what lighting would be subject to the ordinance had that been in place when they did their new facade on the Triangle Stop?
Nothing for them because that would just be a building remodel of an existing structure. There was no site expansion and there was no building addition. So that would not have been captured by this.
Okay, so any lights they had on front of the store wouldn't have been
Well, sorry.
privy
So
to.
if there had been a wall pack light and if they were changing it to a different light fixture, then again, that's it's going to be hard to catch all those things, but that's where we would try and get the word out that if you're replacing this type of fixture, we'd prefer you to go to something like this. But again, even though they did apply for a zoning permit for that, if the ordinance would have been in place at the time, it would have not been captured by this.
Okay.
In terms of lighting plan review and all that.
Anything else? Anything motion to close?
I'll make a motion to close discussion.
Thank you, Randy. Second.
I'll second the motion.
Randy. Jeff. Thank you, Jeff. Any more discussion before we close? All hearing none. All in favor? Aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Okay, we're closed. So at this point, need to take action if so desired by motion. And it looks like we've got several things we've got to do. We're doing them all together. We're doing one at a time. That would staff the clerk up.
I defer to the clerk. I mean, the normal way is either a motion for or against, or to table with changes. If you do move to approve, you could move to approve and adopt the statement of consistency in one motion, or you could do it separately. But I'll defer to the clerk.
And I'm going to say, since the statement of consistency requires a vote count at the bottom of it, just in case there's anybody who wants to vote one way on one and one on the other, we would do them separately.
That being said, I'll entertain time, table, whatever we're gonna do.
Well, I'd like to see this town adopt a lighting ordinance, and yes, I had a lot of questions, and but I have faith in the planning board and the staff and their due diligence to develop one, and that was one reason for my question about what would take to implement it in terms of cost or training or anything like that. It seems to me that's not going to be a heavy lift to implement this as it's currently written, and I'm willing to give it a try because we can always come back and revisit it. But for that reason, I would move that we adopt the text amendment to land use lighting standard. I'm not sure exactly how to phrase this, but
You need more information? You got it. Okay. We got Jeff with a motion. It's Randy second. Any discussion on the motion?
would like to have seen a little bit separate. That was all I said. That's just my opinion.
Any more discussion? Hear none, all in favor? Aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Hear none. Okay, so now we're looking for the consistency statement, if I said that correctly. We'll need a motion for that, and then we're gonna do an individual vote on that. Is that how we do it, or by motion and then?
Now, you can do it the same way you did the last one. It's just in case somebody didn't want to vote for the ordinance, but wanted to vote for the consistency statement.
Okay,
If it passed,
okay, gotcha.
Mayor Gons, may I ask, did we need an effective date or on that motion?
Probably so.
I took the liberty to, when you said the text amendment number, also include the ordinance number in your motion. There was an ordinance in the back of your packet for that, and that has an effective date of 12:01 a.m. on January 26th, 2024.
Okay, I'm satisfied with that. So we don't have to revisit that.
Okay,
I might have.
so still, I'm looking for a consistent.
You could make it that you're adopting the statement of consistency as presented.
Okay. All right, I got a motion. I need a second.
I'll second the motion.
Thank you, Jeff. Any discussion? Hearing none, all in favor? Aye. Any opposed? Hearing none. Okay. That's all you need, correct? Okay. So whenever staff gets caught up on to B, study discussion for the part-time.
Mayor and council, this evening you have in front of you a staff report, excuse me, outlining the recommendations for the pay study for the part-time employees. We had discussed this a couple weeks ago. Having completed the study for the full-time employees, we reached back out to the original consultant, who did not charge us for this additional scope of work. He did some digging and provided me some information supporting increasing our part-time hourly wage for our park staff from its current wage of $18 per hour to either $19 or $19.50 per hour. We also looked at the administrative assistant position. This is a position we've had on the books for a couple of years now. But excuse me, as part of that work, as part of the pay study work, we took a deeper dive into the existing position responsibilities, not just what was in the job description, which is the exact same process we followed for the full-time employees. And Mr. Hill recommended we increase that position from a grade 13 to a grade 14. And then further with that, I did some additional research on job openings in the area, and I'm recommending that we follow Mr. Hill's recommendation to move to a grade 14 and increase the existing hourly rate from $18 to $24.39 per hour, which would place that position at the midway point for that salary range. Our part-time employees, we budget 2,000 hours for our park staff. That's 1,000 hours for an individual employee who works most of the year. And then we have 2 part-time individuals who are scheduled for 500 hours, who work basically between the time change between March and November. And then our part-time administrative assistant position is scheduled for 1,000 hours annually. So combined, if everyone works their full hours, which typically is not the case, The annual increase would be $9,390 that the town's budget, beginning now and carrying forward through the next year. So in summary, I'm recommending that we increase the part-time park ranger pay from $18 to $19.50 per hour, and the administrative assistant to a grade 14 with a wage of $24.39 per hour.
Questions, discussion for staff? Daniel, that increase, the taxes.
No, sir, that was not calculated.
Okay.
It's a nominal amount though, so we did not calculate it.
As administrative assistant, has that position already been upgraded to 14, or is it still currently at 13?
It's still currently 13.
But is that action this council has to take, or
Mhm.
are you capable of?
No,
upgrade
to change it, the grade of a position, council will need to take action to make that effective.
That would be for the position as it's held right now and going forward. So if it was vacated, you would advertise it at that.
Mm-hmm. We would advertise it for that grade, and then depending upon the qualifications of the applicant, we would look at their individual wage when they came on board. Mm-hmm. That's right.
Dan, I'm just gonna ask this, since we're right here in this, I mean, is that do you feel like that is a part-time position at this point?
I would plan to recommend it be a full-time position July 1st.
At that point, I don't know if we're at liberty to discuss that, but if that was as a position
Mm-hmm.
and it was full-time,
Mm-hmm.
what would that person be making an hour?
Well, it would be within the range of the position, which is night.
Stay in that range. Did we had it looked at it before or not?
No, we did not look at this position as part of the full. We don't have a full-time employee in that position per se. I mean, we have an employee who shares duties, but there's not one individual who covers that role.
Yeah.
So if this is approved, then we move it to a grade 14, and then we convert it to a full-time position in July. We would keep it at a grade 14, and then depending upon who fills that spot, the wage would be dictated based on their qualifications when we hire that position.
Also, if they become a full-time employee, then they'll also be eligible for insurance,
That's right.
retirement, vacation
Mhm.
days,
That's right.
all that. So
Yep, that'd be
that's a big bonus all itself.
yeah, that'd be a full benefit position at that point. I will remind the board, we're getting a little bit broad on our discussion here, but we do have some retirements coming up in the next 18 months to 2 years, and part of my recommendation to support this becoming a full-time position is to help backfill those positions a little bit until we get to get through those retirements and beyond.
So as we move forward with this, are we looking for two motions? One to 13 and 14 for that one position, and the overall, we can do the overall at a increase based on the recommendation of Mr. Hill.
Yeah.
So Daniel, just a quick question, I know she said it. So, are you recommending it that it was grade 14 because of their background and their skills? Or are you recommending it to go to grade 14 because you think that's where it needs to be?
Because I think that's where it is.
You listed the
Mm-hmm.
thing, skills and background,
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
so which is it?
The position moving to a grade 14 is independent of the individual in the role at the moment. So it would be upgrading the position so that when it becomes full-time, the range is higher than what it would be for a grade 13. Now, what I'm not doing is recommending we move it to a 14 and put them at the minimum hourly wage for that position, because that's where I'm considering individual skill set and responsibilities for that individual.
You want,
Sure. Mm-hmm. To 19.50 an hour. Okay. I'll just do it immediately.
Okay, I got a motion for that. Second.
I'll second the motion.
Thank you, Jeff. Any discussion on that one? Hearing none. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Any opposed? None. Okay. We need to make this by motion for the administrative assistant. Further this in there.
Mr. Mayor, I'll move that we upgrade the administrative assistant position from the current grade 13 to a grade 14.
Okay. And can we, since we did, we can do the pay increase with the same motion, can't we? Go ahead and do that.
Right. If I can ask a question in the midst of a motion making, the 2439, that's the current midpoint for that. Okay.
So grade 14.
I move that we upgrade the position to a 14 with a hourly rate at the midpoint of 2439 per hour.
Oh, we got a motion. Second.
Yes. Effective immediately.
Oh.
This is
Okay. All right. We got first and second. Any discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Hearing none. Okay. All right, we're up to the
You have two Board of Adjustment members that are coming up on their term limits in February, and one of them is Mr. Bert Limkes. He has been on the Board of Adjustment since 2004, and he currently serves as the chair. He's a dedicated member, and he's expressed an interest in continuing. It's a one-by-one agreement. Go.
So both are still interested in serving? Okay. Any questions before we break them down?
Is there any applicants?
No. None on file.
Is there any openings?
No.
So it's a full board, just who's the vice chair? Heidi?
Linda B. Gartner.
you looking for a motion?
Mhm.
We,
It's your motion. Okay.
Heidi?
For and their reappointment will be
3 years.
effective. Okay, you got that.
Yeah.
All right, I got a motion. Looking for a second. Randy, second. Any discussion? Okay. Okay, thank you. All right, all in favor? Aye. Any opposed? Okay.
With the payroll that I ran today, we have officially finished replacing all of our ARPA funds. Revenue replacement officially unrestricts it. And so we are completed with that. So that's, at least for Daniel and I, it's big news.
Yes, for sure.
Yes. March was, first of all, was an estimate, and we have been moving that based on, this has been a multiple year process. There have been new positions, there have been increases, and we figured out we could count overtime that the part-time people were getting. So that just, we moved it forward a little bit.
Is that all you had, Sue? Okay, moving on to Nicole, Parks and Rec.
Just real quick, we have a blood drive right here in Town Hall tomorrow, so 11 to 5. There's still a few open slots available, but come on by and donate some blood. Just a couple other things. Next month, we're starting a Couches 5K program here at Pittsburgh Park, so if anyone's been interested in running a 5K, we got a good program starting next month. And we also have our tennis lessons. Our spring sports are right around the corner, even though we're not quite February yet, but so tennis will start next month, as well as soccer out here. And then just lastly, May the 4th, I know you've probably already heard, Mills River Day. We're currently really looking for sponsors for that event. So if you have a business in town or you want to help be a part of that community and part of that really great event, just let us know. We'd love to have you be a part of it.
Okay, Michael, Plan Director.
You may have seen this in your council reports, but recently we advertised the request for qualifications for the Planning Department's Unified Development Ordinance Project, or UDO. Just since we hit on the mixed use discussion, that is something that will be included in this. So not only will we be reorganizing our codes into a more coherent development ordinance, but we'll be looking at some of the language, also looking at the zoning districts and the zoning map. That doesn't necessarily mean that we have to adopt a new zoning map at the end of it, but there would be public outreach, just like we did with the comprehensive plan, and recommendations that come out of that after we choose a consultant. So glad that process has gotten kicked off. For anyone out there listening who's a planning consultant and does code work, those RFQs are due February 13th. Staff completed the shopping center review last week and sent comments to their folks. I'm hopping on a call with them tomorrow, but we probably expect plans to be resubmitted relatively quickly. But just wanted to update you on that progress. And then I think I mentioned this at a previous meeting, but Pepsi is almost doubling the size of their building. It's just a building addition, so there wasn't a whole lot to review, but I did issue that zoning permit today. So they're doing a 66,000 square foot building addition just to the left of their current building towards Amazon.
Okay.
All I have.
Town Manager, Daniel.
Got a few updates to share. Each year, we are required to submit an annual report back to the state for the charging stations that we installed a few years ago. And I just wanted to share some interesting numbers. The first year we reported for was 2021. Now, granted, that was only 8 months because they came online in April, but we had a total usage of 430 vehicles. Last year, for the full 12 months, we had a total of 891 charging events. And then for 2023, the year we just finished, we had 1,438 charging events, which is a 60% increase over last year, which is pretty interesting. And according to the data that the formulas that they use in this table, we've in the last 2 years displaced over 2,000 gallons of gasoline usage by providing charging to vehicles. So just interesting facts there. Usage is continuing to grow. Other updates, soon you will be seeing some work going on along the highway corridor out here for the widening project. The state and utility crews are both moving utilities right now, or will be very soon, and begin cutting down trees along the corridor. So you'll be seeing some work on that. Work has begun, but you'll be continuing to see more. I'm going to ask two folks in the room to confirm this, but delinquent tax letters are going out next week. Is that right? That's the goal. I'm looking at you. Yes, that is the goal. Okay. Next week. Tomorrow, the mayor and I and Parks Director and Mr. Moore from our planning board are meeting with NCDOT to talk about the drainage situation out here we discussed last week at your workshop. This was on your calendar that you adopted earlier this year, but the budget workshop is scheduled for March 8th. Just want to remind you of that. And then lastly, I want to thank all of our staff who are here and those who are also not here. It used to be for a long time, the winter months were a little bit quieter for staff. That does not seem to be the case anymore. January has been a very busy month, and everyone's done a phenomenal job keeping up and doing a wonderful job with a great attitude. And I really appreciate the work of everyone and the council as well as our advisory boards. Everyone's been very busy, so thank you for that. And just a reminder that we have a closed session once we get the room cleared out.
Council comments? Anyone?
I just want to say there was no criticism at the line ordinance. But I know there are several planning board members here. I know it's difficult to start new.
Anything else?
I'd like to take the opportunity just to thank the planning board publicly for leaning in on several issues. One, lighting ordinance, which we could take action on tonight, but also addressing MRMU. I think that's a noble effort, and I hope it bears fruit, but I'll be anxious to see what comes from planning board. So I'm right in there with you. That something needs to be done. Thank you.
Anything else?
I'd like to say thank you to the board. I do want to say constantly the only issue I have, and me and Dan discuss this on a weekly basis, is sometimes some of the microphones don't work. And you can't hear them. And I feel like that if a resident puts the time and the effort into coming to the meeting, the homework it takes to come be prepared for the meetings, that I want to hear what they have to say. And me and Daniel discussed it. He's talking about maybe getting them to do something, put the lights on so they're in a better position. So we can hear that. I hope that we get it to where we can hear everybody's comments because I value it.
Anybody else?
That did a good job.
I got tomorrow the meeting 9 o'clock, correct? 9:30, and we're meeting over here at the DOT.
At their office, that's right.
So we got room for one more council member if they so desire to be in on that meeting, if you want to be. Not wanting to hold anybody out, we'd have to have a special meeting to have more than just two of us, sir. Next thing, Daniel, get me a copy of that charging report. I'd like to share that with MPO and ATTAC. And then I would like to, since he wasn't here last time, congratulate Jim Player on his newly position at Fletcher, replacing Bob Davy as a council person over there. We're glad to have you here, and we're glad to have you over there. And tell all of them in Fletcher, I feel like this board would help them anyway, and well, we know they'd help us. So, all right, that's all I've got. Before we adjourn, we've got a closed session, so we'd ask each and everybody to leave the building for a while. And who are we inviting? Just staff or?
I might come get blood tomorrow.
Ooh.